Hello and welcome to this brief analysis of Chapter 9 of Crow Country by Kate Constable. Alright, let's get stuck into it, shall we? Chapter 9. There's a heavy focus on Sadie in this chapter and her characterization and a few of her faults and flaws in her development. We move on from last chapter where she has sort of just managed to get home after one of her flashback experiences, and she's still really trying to process that information. And then we get this sort of description here. Under the spray of warm water, Sadie looked down at herself and shivered. For a few hours she'd left this body. She'd inhabited someone else's body, someone else's life. And this is her trying to come to grips with reality and trying to feel normal again after her experiences, and trying to wash away the feelings that she'd experienced there. And she's reflecting on those experiences, and as an audience we can sort of see how odd that would have been to be transported back in time like she did. And this slipping in between today's world and the world of the past is why this is a time slip novel, and it's a very important feature of the narrative structure. If we move on over here, we can see where I've highlighted the quote. So the crow had sent her back into the past to live one night in the history of her own family. But why? Your story. And this kind of reflects this idea that there's mystery to this, and Sadie's got to be the one to solve that. And Sadie's not given all the answers by the crow. She has to go and investigate and find out what's going on. And of course, these thoughts that Sadie's having mirror our own. So she mimics what the audience is actually going through at this point. If we continue on here, in her discussion with Lockie, she reveals a lot of her motivation, and she's quite superficial in just wanting to have this relationship with this older teenager, someone that she's quite she looks up to essentially. And it reads here, Sadie followed, prepared to admire any old bicycle if it belonged to Lockie. So it wasn't something she really cared about, but she wanted to have that level of engagement with him. We can see how she's infatuated with Lockie and is behaving in an unusual manner in an attempt to impress him. And this is much like the way Ellie is acting to try and impress David as well. She's behaving in a way she wouldn't normally. And then we've got this section here. Where would we go? Said Sadie hastily. Lockie shrugged. I don't know. Know anywhere worth going? What about your lake? My lake? Yeah, geez, it's great, isn't it? Real tourist attraction. What about the stones? The words were out of her mouth before she could call them back. Far off in the distance she heard a crow's mournful cry, wah! In this section here we can see how, in order to create this connection with Lockie, Sadie's trying to give up some information, trying to have some sort of connection with him by sharing this secret with him. And we can see how the characters react differently to the setting. Where you've got Lockie's reaction, he jokes about it and he criticises the place to which he belongs, really. Whereas Sadie feels a sense of awe and a sense of admiration in some ways for this setting. So we get very different perspectives of how the characters associate with each of the settings here, or with the setting here. And of course we can see how this represents their stark differences between their connection with the land. And Lockie's views here are very typical of European Australians, and how they just saw the land as something that they owned, not necessarily something to be admired. Let's keep going, shall we? Further on, if we have a look at this bit here, so after they get to the secret location, and Sadie's regretting having brought Lockie along here, and he even jokes more about it once he gets here, where he's very sort of scornful in the way he talks to her. Secret women's business, is it? Secret men's business. secret kid's business. He was laughing at her, and then his face softened. Okay, mate, it's your special place, is it? I won't tell anyone. And then he moves on to say, now it's our special place. And because of that connection, because she's used her understanding and knowledge of this place to forge that connection with Lockie, she is starting to ignore the importance of the crows. Whereas she'd felt guilty before, she's lost that sense of guilt by the time she gets to the end of this chapter. And that's a real shame, because I think as an audience we're let down a little bit by what Sadie's done here. And we get that captured really well in this last paragraph. Sadie nodded. She could hear the crows cawing angrily somewhere in the distance, but she didn't care. Her heart was singing. She had a secret to share with Lockie Mortlock. Right, well, I hope that gives you a bit of an insight into some of the important parts of this chapter, and we'll see you again for an analysis of the other chapters of the text. This has been an ETV production brought to you by Prendeville Catholic College.